Let's go ahead and listen to Jubilee with Socialists versus Capitalists. Oh boy, this certainly won't infuriate me. Not at all.
No.
That's not Trump, though. Unfortunately,
but I'm giving an example. Thank you, Sebastian.
I don't think that's a valid.
So you want 91% slavery people?
No.
That's not Trump, though. Unfortunately,
But I'm giving an example. Thank you, Sebastian.
I don't think that's a valid question. That's not what we're talking about.
It's exactly what we're talking about.
No, it's not.
Maybe you're misunderstanding my point then. I'm making the argument that capitalism is the most perfect system.
Wait. No, you fucking hell. Okay, so. I believe I know exactly who this person is. This person here, I don't remember her name right now, but she helped run the Joe Jorgensen campaign. She is one of the main members of America's Libertarian Party. She's done video responses to me, and she seems to, like, zero in anytime anybody does anything about her. So I guess I just did it again.
Question. That's not what we're talking about.
It's exactly what we're talking about.
No, it's not.
Maybe you're misunderstanding my point then. I'm making the argument that capitalism is the most perfect system we have out of any other market.
This is not.
Why does your middle ground have 7 people? 3 of which are socialist and 4 of which are capitalist? Shouldn't it be more even? I'm not familiar with the middle ground system, but I don't know, it feels weird.
No one should be a billionaire in a moral society. Can they agree a step forward?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in a moral society, you wouldn't have billionaires. So the reason that most socialists will argue that is because the material conditions required to make a billionaire require a system that allows you to exploit labor. And most socialists would consider a system that allows you to exploit labor the way that capitalism does to be an immoral system. Okay.
I just personally believe that no one makes $1 billion from their own work. You have to make $1 billion through exploitation. It's a loaded word for a lot of people. I personally believe that's just the siphoning of the value someone creates through their labor to a single or small group of individual capitalists, ultimately.
Yeah, so I support because I agree with what you're saying, but also I think society's morals are a little mixed up right now. So that's one. But then for 2, I do think there are some billionaires doing great things. Like I think of like Melinda French Gates, Mackenzie Scott off the top of my head, and they are like trying to distribute their wealth to help other people. I think the issue I have with billionaire or some people that are soon to be trillionaire status is that they were ever able to achieve that while there are people that are like living on the street and don't have access to healthcare and all these things. And those are where my morals is making sure everyone has their basic needs met.
A big thing for me is that no matter the incentives, no matter what is done in terms of a free market society, you're never going to get every single billionaire to agree to give up large, vast amounts of their wealth to help the rest of the world.
Can they disagree a step forward?
My opinion on billionaires, I don't care that they're billionaires. For me,
I like that the socialist is one of the, like the one socialist goes, yeah, actually, I'm okay with there being billionaires. I don't know if you're actually a socialist because like if you're actually a socialist, right? In a socialist society, nobody ever makes $1 billion. No one person is able to accumulate that much wealth in a socialist society with the way that wealth is distributed in a socialist society. But okay.
as a person that's coming from an immigrant family, I see them as motivation. My parents do the best they can. I want to do better. I don't care for corporations in general. I'm a populist. I care more about the people. The people also benefit from these billionaires because billionaires create jobs. As net worth rises, in some cases, the salary of the people rises as well.
I mean, if Elon Musk, you implicitly mentioned...
In some cases, wait, hold on. In some cases, what about the situations where that doesn't happen? Where the salary of the billionaires keeps on going up and up and up, and things like the average wage of the worker in America and the minimum wage stay completely stagnant. Like what happens here?
Elon Musk is perhaps the world's first trillionaire. If he does become the world's first trillionaire, it's not because he stole it, it's because thousands of shareholders all mutually agreed and voted that should the company reach 9 times its current valuation, he would be awarded stock options. Forget about Elon Musk benefits, the shareholder benefits, environmentalists like myself who try to only buy electric vehicles, we will be able to benefit because the cost of a Tesla will go down. So it really depends on your definition of morality, but honestly, as someone who believes in Judeo...
Do you really just make the case that Tesla's the electric vehicle? My guy, every fucking vehicle distributor sells electric vehicles. Every one, but they don't tend to cost the exorbitant amounts that Tesla does.
Christian values and believes in the Hebrew Bible, I can't think of anything more immoral than to take someone else's money for the sake of, well, everyone deserves. It's true, everyone should be able to have a decent wage and have a home and have a living wage, but you don't solve that by taking other people's money. And if you want to play this game of billionaires, well, what about millionaires? And just like the Laffer curve suggests...
Said, what about millionaires? All right, so I can tell you from experience that a person can amass $1 million in a lifetime without too much trouble depending on their circumstances and career. You don't really need exploitation of people around you to become a millionaire. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you are, we'll actually use numbers for this. We'll use numbers for this, right? So let's say you're making $50,000 a year. That's the job that you have. I know most jobs aren't this, but stay with me. We would consider $50,000 a year to be a very, very reasonable amount for a person, because even when it comes to taxes, we don't tend to do the exorbitant tax brackets until fucking $400,000, right? So somebody's making $50,000 a year, and they are living with their parents. Doesn't usually happen, but there are some households where this is perfectly okay. This person's going to make $1 million technically at the end of 20 years. Now, this is ignoring a couple of things. This is ignoring things like a high yield savings account. Let's say for the first couple of years, they sock damn near every single bit of this away in a high yield savings account, like one that has 3 to 4% APR. If you are yanking out that much money, and you are getting that much interest on that much money, that will have an accumulating effect. That person is morally going to eventually hit $1 million. And this is ignoring things like people who spend money on stuff that just ends up performing really, really well, right? So like a 401k. Your 401k is not a retirement plan. It operates as a retirement plan, but realistically, it's stock options that are sold. That's what a 401k is. And there are times where a 401k can do incredibly well, and suddenly you've got a bunch of money from that. There are people at Quick Trip, because of how good the retirement savings plan is at Quick Trip, who will retire millionaires by the age of 50 because they are working a $110,000 a year job as a store manager and then getting stock options and all kinds of stuff on top of that. That is a thing that happens in a ton of different industries. Now, let's say that you're in a situation like one of my friends was in, right? And you get a settlement from a company. That company's settlement with you can end up turning you into a millionaire as well. Technically, you have that money, but you don't have the same ability to work for the rest of your life as anybody else will after an accident. I do have a friend who got into a terrible accident and ultimately ended up coming out the other end with a decent sum of money. And as a result of that, they are technically a millionaire. They aren't going to be earning a single lead cent for the rest of their lives, so they basically have to survive off of interest and everything. But I can think of several situations where a person can morally find their way into the millionaire position. I cannot fathom one where they get to the billionaire position. Because let's say that you are making $400,000 a year, the president's salary. This is the upper echelon that we use to calculate when somebody goes into the no-no tax bracket. This is the end of the line for most Americans if you are working at all. Let's say that you are socking every single penny of this away, just like with the 50,000, you're socking every penny of that away for the next 20 years. Well, what does that look like? That looks like $8 million. What does it look like after another 20 years? And I did that 20 years wrong. I should have done 40 times the original, but I did 20 times that. Either way, math is math. Guess what? This person's making $400,000 times 40 years of their life. $16 million. $16 million. And that is the amount of time that it normally takes most people to be able to retire. You get off at 18, now suddenly you're 58. That used to be butting up on the edge of retirement for a lot of people. Now it's like 67, 68. Changes because we hate people, I guess. If that person takes every lead cent of theirs and socks it away, even with a high yield savings account, they're not even sneezing near $100 million. I cannot fathom a world where that person legitimately makes that money because the math doesn't check out for it.
If you are going to take away people's wealth after they reach a certain number, then I can guarantee you our economy will stop being as productive as it currently is.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's an extremist view when people start talking about taking away people's wealth. I mean, I think that's like the buzzwords that scares people when people are saying simply they want people's basic needs met. Obviously, given where society is, we can't take away Elon Musk's like $400 billion plus dollars. But I'm just saying my point of view, my moral compass is everyone's basic needs met. And then when I see certain billionaires, not just him, several of them that could be doing more and choosing.
You don't sound like a socialist, ma'am. You just sound like a liberal. Like, yeah, socialists want everybody's basic needs met, but we specifically tend to advocate for workers to own the means of production that would necessitate the billionaire no longer having their wealth. I don't know if Jubilee actually got socialists on. Maybe I'm wrong.
Not to. I think that's just a reflection of their moral compass.
I'm not the kind of person to say we should have billionaires. I think there's the extremity view that like, yeah, like we should just get rid of everybody's assets, and that's not the case. Like you should be able to own your phone or a teddy bear or something like that. I think, but to say that Elon Musk got his wealth from free market.
Hold on. What? No, there is not a single fucking socialist on the planet, and there's not a single communist on the planet, unless they're really fucking stupid, who would have the opinion that we get rid of personal property. Like, okay, god damn it, we're gonna have to do the Marxist thing real quick. So, within most ideologies that are informed by Marxist ideology of any variety, there is a delineation between personal property and private property. Personal property is your fucking toothbrush. Private property is the toothbrush factory. Nobody wants your stupid toothbrush, but the workers collectively should own the toothbrush factory.
Because I think it's a little bit disingenuous. We have to acknowledge the fact that there is rent-seeking by corporations just as much as the state. And so to say that it's a free market and that's the reason why he did so great, there's so many other things that go into whether he did great, how great he did. And I think we do have to kind of take those things.
What I had wanted to say, because I resonate with what you're saying a lot, I think you'd have to be a monster not to want everyone to have their basic needs met. So the issue then becomes how we get there. So when we say, both of us say, we want everyone's basic needs met, I would ask you, well, how is that going to be done if it's not taking from other people? And that's the sticking point. The fact is, before government started really interfering in medicine, I remember when I bought my own health plan when I was a teenager. I know that probably seems like, the Flintstones right now, but I was able to buy that on my own. And now you go through the marketplace, and it's just insane. I don't see how anyone affords that. And that's from government trying to help.
What do you suppose?
What the fuck are you talking about? Ma'am, the marketplace is the only reason I'm able to afford healthcare in the first place. What the fuck are you talking about?
Elon, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg should do with their money. If you were able to run their money and run how wealth distributes, how would you tax them?
Karen Ann Harlos. That's who that is. Yep, I recognize her. She has made a lot. She has made a lot of content on me. But then again, she makes a lot of content on anybody who makes content on her, so it makes sense.
How would we be affected, the middle and the lower class?
Yeah, I would cap it at 900 million is the amount you can make, and I would distribute the rest, to make sure everybody got their needs met. So yes, I guess to answer your question, if we're talking about today's society where we're at with all the billionaires, that's what I would do.
I would bring us back to 1950s tax rates in the United States. 91% tax rates on the highest tax margin. Now let's explain what that means.
So you want a 91% slavery people?
No, okay, so Karen here is a hardcore libertarian. She believes that any amount of taxation whatsoever is slavery. She's a very, very deluded person in this way. Because taxation is not slavery. Taxation is us existing in a society and a portion of our funds going towards the collective betterment of society. Now, does it actually get used that way? No, it doesn't. Because there are corrupt politicians and lobbyists and all kinds of shit that make that money get spent elsewhere.
No.
Yeah,
Yes,
I don't know about that terminology.
Hold on.
And of course it's not, and I'm not trying to be insensitive, I'm really not.
We're talking about a tax on people that are making more than $10 million per year on every dollar above $10 million. Wow. Let's say that. Up to that point, does anybody really need to live on more than $10 million?
When is it your place to decide that?
It should be everybody's place.
It's not my place to decide. I don't care.
It's all of our places. We live in a society together. All of us get a say, ma'am.
Listen, you could go out and blow all your money on a stripper, and I don't care.
Listen, we live in a world where the private corporations have been given so much that has been taken from all of us. I actually have to disagree with something you said earlier, that we are much better off now than we were in like the 1950s. Racial bias and everything notwithstanding, people had more housing. People had more access to housing.
Houses were a tenth of the size.
Well, sure.
People now own 2 cars.
But there was the GI Bill, there was processes for people to get loans, and housing ownership.
Are you saying people can't get loans today?
Yes.
Oh, really?
They
How
can't
so?
get housing loans?
I got
Well, if you don't have the capital to put up money, sure.
I can't get a housing loan. Most of us can't.
If a bank knows you don't have the capital to pay back a loan, sure, they won't give it to you. But the idea that you are disenfranchised from getting a loan because of a capitalist
system. The idea that it's easier now to get a loan for a house than it would have been in the 1950s is absolutely ridiculous.
The reason that it's harder to get a loan for a house now is because the prices for houses have gotten so big because the markets are not properly regulated. The pricing for houses getting so big means the loans have to be naturally larger. And the banks are not incentivized to lower the cost of housing, to try to fight to lower the cost of housing, because the higher the cost of housing, the bigger a loan they can give out, and the higher they can charge on interest on that loan.
Get a loan now. The issue,
yeah. But does that mean it's safer?
Okay, let's look at what happened from 2000 to 2007. We all know what happened in 2008, right? Okay, that was all because of risky lending practices that were all occurring in that decade and the decade leading up to it, which led to the big pop.
Right now, banks. by privately owned
banks, allowed
You
by the
think government owns banks should be better?
Okay, well,
I didn't say that.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. The issue isn't that you can't qualify for the loan. The issue is that the properties are too high and expensive, so that the amount is
Do you think government-owned banks would be better? I don't know if I'd say government-owned banks. I would say that unions would be better.
just too outside of your reach to qualify for
And
the
they are
loan.
only going up.
Why is it going up?
To lower
Because we
is for
can't
the-
build enough houses.
No, I just haven't seen evidence that it's government that is performing a stoppage on housing wholesale. Just on a practical level, if there's an empty home sitting, to me, that's a crime. I think that if you are letting a home sit for 10 years, maybe it's time for someone to come in and say, hey, this house, if we don't want the price to go down, maybe we should, give it to somebody else.
Forcefully take it from somebody.
Yeah, I actually, yeah.
Okay, so you advocate for it. I'm glad we got to
I
that.
believe
So,
in-
okay.
Well, here's one thing. Socialists don't want to take your freaking toothbrush.
I don't
wanna
care
say-
about my
I'd rather take my toothbrush than my home.
No.
That whole
We'll have to
personal
talk about-
property thing. Listen, you could have my toothbrush. You can't.
But if you're not using your home, who cares? I recognize the want here, but if there is a house that is not getting used for anything, then that is an issue. Now, there are arguments to be made. There are arguments to be made about somebody wanting to have a second house solely so they can use it as a hangout spot with their friends or shit. But guess what? Usually, we're not dealing with people like that because most people can't afford that second house in the first fucking place. We're not talking about your regular Joe Schmo that inherited another house and therefore has a second one for a while and doesn't know what to do with it. We're not talking about that person. Usually when we're talking about taking houses back from people, we're talking about taking houses back from fucking BlackRock.
Have my house. I'm sorry.
You're not a property owner.
How do you know how many
that we're
houses I
talking
have?
about. It's not what I'm saying. The vast majority of housing is not owned by individual people. It's owned and maintained by corporations.
I have the stats on that, and it's not true. So about 72% of housing is owned by single-family owners, so owner-occupied. About the remaining 28% is owned by investors. Now, when we say investors, we mean people that own two to 9 houses. This could be your grandma that owns her house and her brother's house. That is the remaining 20%. The last 2-ish%, that is big BlackRock investors. So the majority of houses are owned by people living in them or by mom and pop.
How many homes are we
landlords.
talking about is what I'm saying.
I'm telling you the percentages.
But the percentage of
all of the houses.
There needs to be a number there, though. So.
Economic inequality is the root.
Wait, no, I wanted to know what those numbers are. Because the next part of that equation, it's not about who owns more. It's not like single houses are owned more by people and therefore you win. No, I agree with the fucking socialist on here. The numbers that matter are how many unhoused Americans do we have and how many houses do we have that could be accommodating those Americans. How many unhoused Americans do we have? How many blank houses do we have? Those are the numbers that matter. The fucking smokescreen of actually BlackRock doesn't own as much as you think. That's not what no. Again, that is a smokescreen.
Of most social problems. If you agree with the prompt, step forward.
So, wait, hold on.
Of most social problems.
Economic inequality is the root cause of most social problems.
If you agree with the prompt, step forward.
Okay.
I guess I can go. I think if you look at all the problems that cause social harm in society, you can regress crime, you can regress domestic violence, you can regress pretty much any issue on inequality. And I think that there's a pretty clear link that that's the problem in and of itself. And we try to compensate for that in many ways through distribution, but I think it'd be hard to make a case that something else is worse than economic inequality, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's a knock-on effect. You have economic inequality. It leads to people being unstable in them being able to feed and house themselves. Being able to support their families, being able to survive. We live in a society that requires you.
Lim, I haven't seen this video, so I'm just going to assume that when we get to the capitalists, we're going to get some version of pull yourself up from your bootstraps, some version of personal responsibility, something like that, right?
To have a certain amount of money to survive in a livable way. So, of course, the inequality in economic stability is going to be a central cause of societal ills.
Yeah, and I think too with the different intersections, like Black and brown communities, queer communities, disabled, like you mentioned, domestic violence, we already have a society set up a certain way and being such a capitalist society that when all these other intersections come into play, it, like we've said, causes more, inequality within it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the vast majority of crime or any other social ill, monetary factors are what drive a lot of it. Even if you look at stuff like domestic violence, you could even break that down and say, hey, look, because we're having financial problems in our marriage or whatever the case may be, that can cause the issues. And so if you have everything better distributed, then I think that you would solve a lot of, not all crime, but the vast majority of it for sure.
And I'm a survivor of domestic violence, so I can definitely attest to the financial abuse aspect of why some people can stay longer than we'd want to is because we can't get out from under, where are we going to go, to the street, so worse situation or scenario than the one we know, unfortunately. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think one thing I can think of is housing insecurity, a major.
So 12.4% of homes are private equity. 0.08% of all houses in the U.S. equates to about 180,000 houses. There are estimated to be about 771,000 people who experience homelessness in the United States, at least on a single night. Those numbers may actually go down if you are looking at people who are consistently homeless. So what that tells me is that we have plenty of houses for those homeless people.
Issue, in my view, of why there's such a problem with housing and with not just homelessness, but people having inadequate housing is accumulation of capital ownership of real property, you know? So I feel like that inherent unequal structure ends up having people, you know, not be able to afford housing. It brings the prices up, and they stay up no matter the circumstances. And that endless growth doesn't allow for people who are already in a difficult situation to find available housing. And you know, we have millions and millions of empty homes and millions more people homeless.
As interested as I am to hear how the quote socialists argue their points, including the one who thinks that it's okay to have billionaires, I am more interested in the capitalist points. So,
and I personally believe we could house every single person if we literally just give people housing.
Yeah, I agree. And then also too, even with there's like the stereotype, because I've also experienced homelessness myself, like lived on Skid Row the whole nine. So I was still working like 2 jobs, and we're not making livable wages. Minimum wage is different than like a livable wage. That's different than like a reasonable wage depending on the industry you're in. I do a lot of freelance, so sometimes it can get murky. So I believe to your point, what you were saying, like people are doing everything they can, and we keep like raising things up, but not raising up like how people are able to afford living. Then that's how we have like the homeless or unhoused epidemics that we're dealing with right now and everything else.
Can they disagree or step forward?
I would like to start because there was something personal that was said. So I grew up in a very domestically violent family. I mean, as a child, I actually was constantly anticipating having to attack my father to save my mother. It was not based upon economic inequality. So I think to reduce domestic violence down to that is simply not fair. There are...
Hold on. Wait. But ma'am, nobody reduced it down. This is about net gains, net losses. This is about the majority of issues. If the majority of issues come down to economic reasons, then your individual experience of domestic violence is not a data point. That is simply an anecdote. Like, it's terrible that that happened to you, and I'm sorry that that happened to you. But Nana says, while these are decently made arguments compared to the pundit talking points that came from the capitalists, you know, like, when somebody goes, how dare you diminish my life experience to an economic issue, I don't know what your individual life experience was, but that doesn't seem to be what happened in any way, shape, or form.
Inequalities that cause issues, but there's no way to get around that. So you're going to have inequalities even if everyone was monetarily equal, but of course I would say, where's that money going to come from? It's just going to make everyone equally miserable, and if that's the equality we're looking for, fine. But once you get past that, if everyone still had the same money, there's such a thing as pretty privilege. There's going to be someone who gets advantages because they're prettier, or there's going to be someone that gets advantages because they're smarter. So
okay, and so she seems to be arguing against a utopian society, saying that, like, we can't have a utopian society. Cool. Nobody's argued that we should have a utopian society. The argument is we should try to get there, and in our failures, we will inadvertently make society better. The argument is not, if we got rid of wealth inequality, all problems would disappear tonight. Because you wouldn't get rid of most racism immediately when you get rid of wealth inequality, right? That's one of the reasons why we tend to have the conversation about class reductionism and how that conversation can get really weird for some people on the left. The argument isn't that you get rid of wealth inequality, you create a perfect utopia. The argument is you get rid of wealth inequality, you create a better society. You make things better for people on average. Yeah, you're gonna have other forms of privilege. And you move on to the next problem. We're asking about a solution to this problem.
Oh, I agree that there...
Yeah, Taryn, I agree with you. Her argument is literally, if we can't fix everything, we shouldn't fix anything. And the thing is, I know that she knows the arguments because this is somebody who's incredibly politically involved. This is somebody who helped with the Joe Jorgensen campaign. This is somebody who is very, very keyed in to, like, political YouTube in general. This is somebody who is a very, very clued in person. I just feel like this is delusion, though.
Are issues with economic equality. I think you would have to be kind of daft not to think that. But I don't think the solution to it is to take from other people to give to other people, because then you're just going to start to create other problems. I think the problem is that we have within society a very small amount of sociopaths, and we make them our politicians that run our lives. I think that is more the bigger problem, because I know capitalists have the reputation of not caring about people. That's not me. And if we started to create a culture of wanting to care about people, I think that would start.
Okay, create a culture, right. I don't give a fuck about the culture, ma'am. What system are you advocating for? What system are you doing? The purpose of a system is what it does. The end result of a system is what the system was trying to accomplish in the first place. So my question would be, what is your system accomplishing? What system do you advocate for, and how does that get a hungry child fed? What system are you advocating for, and how does that help somebody who's chronically ill and can't work?
To solve a lot of the problems, but the thing is we farmed out caring. And the fact is when government becomes the father, we go, we're not going to help that person because the government program is going to help them. And there's something ennobling about giving charity. But
I don't know if that's true. So I am a socialist. I advocate for making sure that we have the government programs that can help people. I have also personally, in my life, either connected people to things that would allow them to get rescued from bad situations, or personally gone out of my way to use my time, my money, my vehicle, my house to try to go and get people out of homelessness, out of abusive situations, out of these situations that are bad for them in general. I do those things because I believe that sometimes people need a hand up and a hand out. I think that that is a thing that people sometimes just need. And there have been times where I needed it in the past. And I don't think that the people who would call themselves socialist in my audience would say that they want to farm out the goodwill towards people to the government. That seems like a really weird talking point. And it really seems like it boils down to just being a talking point.
also about taking charity because you could be the recipient tomorrow. And that's
Dorito Dave says the robber barons were very charitable prior to social services. She is right. That sounds like sarcasm.
the way like fraternal aid societies used to work in the early days of this country. So I think pinning everything just on the boogeyman of economic equality is not the answer, particularly with domestic violence.
If I can complement that as well, none of us, I assume, are millionaires or billionaires. So we are, in fact, living examples of income inequality, yet most of us don't commit crimes. In fact, the overwhelming majority of Americans are not millionaires or billionaires, yet the overwhelming majority of Americans do not commit crime. So to me, the root cause of so many of our societal problems is the revocation of human agency, whereby we are all responsible for our individual choices. And
okay, so if you just look at places that commit crime in America, like, okay, let's see here. Hold on. Let me try to do a thing here. Income inequality versus crime. We have stats on this, right? Fairly certain we actually have stats on this. Said we used to enforce the Sherman and Clayton Acts. I don't know what either of those are. Okay. Let's see here. One sec. So not a study, but it is noting some, so let's just go through this. Years ago, Nobel Prize winner Gary Becker claimed that all crime is economic and all criminals are rational. I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think every criminal is a rational being, because I don't think all people are rational beings. But okay. As he puts it, criminals assess the cost-benefit outcome of their criminal acts, whether breaking the law is worth being caught. He also found that wherever the gap between the rich and the poor is wider, crime rates are higher. Supporting the theory is Gallup's 2018 survey, which asked 148,000 people in 142 countries about how safe they feel in specific contexts, and revealed insightful findings. In Venezuela, the 19th most unequal in the study, about 4/5 of the respondents didn't feel safe walking home alone in fear of prevalent kidnapping or extortion cases in the country. On the other hand, Norway, the 12th most equal country, 95% of people felt safe walking home alone. On a survey conducted by the BBC exploring the connection between poverty and crime, they highlighted that according to the Scottish government statistics in 2021 and 2022, 31% of the people arriving in prison were from the 10% most deprived areas in Scotland. The prisoners identified unemployment and financial difficulties as the leading factors contributing to their political acts. Also, Kelly 2000 found a strong relationship between inequality and violent crime. The study shows that a 1% increase in inequality correlates with more than a 0.5% rise in violent criminal acts. This finding is another piece of evidence that disparities in economic status can lead to social tension, violence, and crime. Another study, Income Inequality, Trust, and Homicide in 33 Countries by Frank J. Elger and Nicole Aitken, examines the relationships between income inequality, interpersonal trust, and homicidal rates amongst those 33 nations. The researchers studied data from 48,000 adults and analyzed income distribution and its effect on the level of trust and incidence of homicide. The results showed that inequality weakened social trusts, leading to antisocial crime and threatening the social cohesion of society that is necessary for making safe communities. Okay. That didn't take long to find. That was actually a pretty quick thing to find. And you can find shit from The Economist that goes over it. You can find all kinds of shit that goes over this. Income inequality is a factor, a major factor that leads to increased crime rates. And to argue that that doesn't is to live in a delusional society. But let's go back to their specific
The root cause of so many of our societal problems is the revocation of human agency, whereby we are all responsible for our individual choices. And I think the greatest proof of this is probably Venezuela.
So I love that he uses the revocation of human agency as the cause for crime, because that's the kind of thing that you can't get any fucking data on. Let's go ahead and grab a disparate thing, revocation of human agency, and then say that that suddenly means that we have a higher crime rate. What does revocation of human agency mean? To some people, revocation of human agency is going to be society just not holding people to personal accountability. For others, it's going to be an oppressive government taking over everything. Depending on who you're talking to, that statement means different things. And oh, by the way, I called it if we are talking about revocation of human agency in the case of personal responsibility, because that is one of the main things people are going to talk about on the capitalist side when it comes to crime.
Venezuela is a socialist country. 90% of all Venezuelans have the same socioeconomic status, i.e. they are all poor. So you would think, well, because they all have the same socioeconomic status and inequality is actually not an issue, yet nevertheless Venezuela is one of the most crime-ridden countries on the entire planet. So to me...
Wait, is Venezuela actually socialist? Because I don't know if that's true. I've never actually heard. So they are governed by a socialist-aligned regime, the United Socialist Party of Venezuela. In it by Hugo Chavez, continued by Nicolas Maduro. The government implemented policies focused on nationalization, state control, and wealth redistribution. However, its economic model has also been described as a form of predatory and authoritarian capitalism. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. That sounds like China, which, man, weird. That's also not a communist country, despite the fact that they are called a communist regime. That's weird. That doesn't look like socialism at all. That doesn't look like workers owning the means of production and therefore having the say in government that lobbyists currently do right now. No, that sounds and that looks a whole lot more like what goes on in fucking China. Anselin says, and the rich, if caught, can afford lawyers that get them parole and probation over diversion programs that can keep them out of prison. Jesus Christ. In 1950, Venezuela was the fourth wealthy... Let me just go ahead and pull this over here real quick. In 1950, oil-rich Venezuela was the fourth wealthiest country in the world, boasting the highest GDP per capita of any South American nation. By 2018, the country had an over 80,000% increase in inflation from the previous year, deemed an economic crisis. Wow. That's so weird. That's so strange. Suris changed the channel, the old bastards in the room. I'm not going to do that. He's not that important to me. I will cover him when I am done with this. I'll cover him in a moment, but I do not align my day based on the whims of the fucking president. See, that meant that 9 out of 10 citizens did not earn enough money to buy food. With such a drastic fall-off from the era of prosperity, economists, politicians, and academics alike have attempted to diagnose the issue, attributing the cause to socialism, economic mismanagement, corruption, foreign intervention, or a combination of all four. However, despite the complexity of the country's collapse, many Americans, especially conservatives, have reduced the current disaster to simply an example of why socialism doesn't work. It is undeniable that Venezuela's political system embraces socialist policies. In 1998, they democratically elected military officer Hugo Chavez, ushering in a regime of socialism. Throughout his 13-year tenure, Chavez reoriented the country's political direction by rewriting the constitution, altering the court system, and nationalizing thousands of private businesses. All right, let's have a conversation about that word. Nationalizing a business, making it something that the state owns, that the government owns, is not what socialism is. That's state capitalism. That's what China does. Nationalizing an industry, is simply privatizing the industry for the purpose of the government. No more, no less. And if you have a government that is able to do such things as rewriting the fucking Constitution, then guess what? That is a regime. I'm sorry, but that's not socialism. That's what the Chinese Communist Party does. And even then, they're not communism. That is state capitalism. But okay, sure. Why not?
It is true that income inequality can be a problem, but at the end of the day, even though we are not millionaires and billionaires, our quality of life compared to the 1950s to 1960s is so much greater. I mean, yes, it is true the wealthier have never been this wealthy, but it's also true that the middle class has never been this wealthy either. So long as all of our wages are not—
Wait. It's also true that the middle class has never been this wealthy either? Yeah, but it's also true that the middle class is shrinking. So how do you account for that? Yeah, what fucking middle class anymore? That's shrinking a ton.
Stagnant, but are actually increasing, then I actually don't see why that's a problem.
I wanted to speak on the domestic violence one because I was just addressing an example within it because there's a lot that goes on in that. So I'm sorry that you experienced that, but I think financial abuse is a very big reason why some people do stay longer than they should because they don't have a way to leave. Like you have to go.
Yeah, imagine that you can't afford to live, so you have to stay living with your abusive partner, and therefore the domestic issues continue to get worse. Like that is an exact reason why an economic condition can cause that to be worse. But this is an hour of a video, and there are only 2 parts that I've covered so far, and we are 38 minutes in. That sounds like something that's going to require a part 2. So, here's what we're going to do. Let me know in the comment section if you want me to cover a part 2 of this video, and if so, then head over to twitch.tv/NecoSuris, where we will cover a part 2 of this, if enough of you decide that that's what you want to do. Let me know in the comment section below, and we may return to this. Said, goddamn, I hate Jubilee. Yeah, it's always weird when you see people you know on Jubilee. Anyway, thank you all for watching this part. If we end up doing more of this, it'll have to be in 3 parts. Yay! But let me know if you guys want to see more of this. Anyway, I guess we have to go watch the POTS. Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Britzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagittarius, you know I'm not saying that last part, Valis of Sereth, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.